Hello, I'm Ted Clay, Senior Business Journalist of SBC Media and Head of Safer Gambling Week. I'm speaking to Dan Spencer from Epic Risk Management, who is the firm's Director of Safer Gambling. How are you today, Dan?
I'm good, Ted. Yeah, good to be here. Nice to speak to you.
Great stuff, great to have you here too. So the main focus of this is obviously you've recently announced a partnership with Mindway AI. So on a more general level, can you just explain to us how do you think AI can enhance the player protection journey? And would you say it's an essential tool in the sort of modern, highly digitized gambling industry?
Yeah, I think there's two really crucial touch points in protecting players from an operator's point of view. And the first one is identifying when is the right time to have an interaction with a player. And the second is the interaction itself. And I think what really impressed me about Mindway's technology is the amount of data and power it gives back to the operator to not only identify the trigger points of when you should interact with the player, but also why. The amount of markers that they use and the richness of the data will give analysts who work for operators a really rounded picture of what's happening for this customer. Of course, they don't know all of the reasons and the mindset behind what's going on, but that kind of happens in stage two with the interaction. So we've been working at Epic on both of those touch points for a number of years now, both identification and interaction. And we've been running two training courses, one called Risk Assessment, one called Interactions Masterclass, which is our most popular offering. And we just saw a really clear crossover between these two companies. If we're going to give operators really rich data, then in my mind, you need to be prepared to have that stage two interaction as well. And our interactions masterclass training, I think, is the best option for upskilling those teams to do that. So Mindway was something that has interested me for a number of years now. And speaking with Rasmus, their CEO, I knew that there was a lot of potential for collaboration to deliver, I guess, an all-round package to identify when people start to exhibit not the signs of harm, because that's what we used to look for, but they're exhibiting the behaviors that could lead to harm, and then trigger that time for interaction.
Okay, so building on that, so you've just mentioned sort of why you partnered with Mindway. I was just wondering if you could go into some more specifics about why you've chosen Mindway particularly for this as your AI partner for this. Like, what was it about the firm's experience in particular that was quite appealing to the team at Epic?
Yeah, I think this isn't a partnership that came around very quickly. It's a company we've been working alongside for about 2 years now. But in my conversations with Rasmus, I think what became clear is that they really hold a passion for protecting players, and that's incredibly important for Epic. It's the first test any company has to pass if they want to work with us is to show that passion for the protection of players. Rasmus had that. His team has that. They've got expertise in all areas of the technology that they use. It's proprietary to them. A lot of that company come from a medical background in using neuroscience to get this job done. So it was easy for them to convince me that they knew what they were doing, that their technology works. I've seen several solutions for this type of thing on the market. In my mind, this is the best product that's out there to do it. And what further convinced me of that was several of our mutual clients praising this tech. And one of the jobs that I've been working on for the last 2 years with a big tier one operator is auditing their program. And they were using Mindway and looking at the results that company was achieving with this product. It spoke for itself. So Mindway was an obvious choice for me.
Okay, that's really interesting. A very tried and tested company then, from your perspective and from what it sounds like from the industry's perspective as well. So can you sort of, I know obviously you probably can't give away too many details at this stage, But could you give us a bit of a breakdown of sort of what the roadmap of your partnership with Mindway AI looks like, and sort of what some of the key objectives are going forward?
I'm sure more will come as we make our way down that road, but for now we can see several areas of overlap where we can help each other. I think that the first step on that roadmap, Ted, is probably to learn a lot more about each other's business. So Epic will be providing free training and consultation to Mindway AI to help them on their RG journey. Mindway will be providing additional training to my teams as well. We will be co-designing a new course that will be a joint product in risk assessment. So a training course to educate those that work in the area of identification, specifically those companies that are using Mindway already. This enables me to deliver a course that we've had for a while now called Risk Assessment, but this time we'll base it on the Mindway user interface. So those companies will then have our training where the screens look exactly how the analysts see them in their desk, on the desk, and we can really put, I believe, lived experience context behind that data, because I think it's one thing to see the rich data that Mindway provides you, but to apply that lens, the mindset of a problem gambler, which is what Epic do. We've got 19 lived experience employees out of the 40 that work for Epic now. So to be able to pull a focus group together very quickly is a real strength of ours, and add that lens of, if I was that customer back in the day when I was being harmed by gambling, how would my data have looked on Mindway's platform, and how can we relate that back to the identification process? So that's the other thing Mindway will do for us is they will provide. We're going to mock up some of our guys' experience in the Mindway platform, so that when they tell their story as part of the training, we can see the Mindway spidergram in the background and how gambling harm can flourish in bad circumstances. So yeah, they'll be providing those visuals. We'll design this course together. We'll be training each other. And like I mentioned earlier, we've got several mutual clients. So working together with those clients a bit more closely, where they're dealing with two suppliers that have a partnership, will become a lot easier and slicker going forward.
Okay, great. So yeah, sounds like there's a lot of interesting stuff to look out for going ahead with this partnership. Now we've obviously talked about data a lot, and it's pretty obvious that data is really important across the betting and gaming industry now in a lot of different ways. Product development, trading, marketing, and now thankfully it's getting heavily involved in safer gambling and responsibility as well. With AI getting more adopted, do you think there could be an issue that maybe like over reliance on AI could eliminate the human element that's needed for an effective, safer gambling interaction?
Well, the great thing about Mindway AI is it does use the human element. So the AI technology is audited by a panel of experts at Mindway that will go through a certain number of cases, and you probably better speak to Rasmus than you are me on this, but as I see it, the panel of experts mark the homework that the robot's done. To put it in layman's terms. Now, what's really interesting with that is you've got people that are working in that field that know what a problem gambler looks like. They know what the behavior that leads to problem gambling looks like. They're researchers and academics. What we will add as part of this partnership is we will then start using lived experience colleagues to do that job of marking the homework of the AI. So a guy called Craig, who's on my team, will then sit on the panel at Mindway and go through these cases on a monthly basis. So if the AI does start to steer in the wrong direction, it's nudged back. And what's nice now is that you will have that nudge coming from two different angles, I guess, research, academia, but also those that have lived through the harm.
So would you say then that sort of going forward, a hybrid strategy between AI and human interaction is the best course of action for anyone to take?
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for the human touch into interactions and interventions, and they are different things. I'm pushing as many operators as I can to pick up the phone more to their customers. Email and live chat are great tools used in the right way, but over reliance on, not just chatbots for customer service, but text-based interactions, in my mind, are not effective interactions if they're relied on or over relied on in that way. And when you've got a solution like Mindway that can be really clear that now is the time to interact with this customer before the harm starts, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're stopping harm at source. So this is more about prevention and education than it is intervention. This isn't the last chance saloon for these customers. This is where they can be steered back into the middle of, we have the epic gambling spectrum. It goes from a non-gambler, occasional gambler, all the way up to pathological gambling. And there's a point within that spectrum where you can clock someone back into a safe space to play. And Mindway, I believe, gives you the data to do that. Epic's training, I think, gives you the skills to do that. And that's the bit that I don't think AI can do. It needs to be a human-to-human conversation where the player realizes the damage that their behavior potentially could do in the future, and empowers the player and gives the player enough tools to make the right decisions at that point. But of course, when you're dealing with data and specifically AI data, on the back end of that, you can make choices for that player that the player wouldn't even necessarily know about. When you've got such rich data on the behavior of your players, there's no end to what you might do in the back office of that to slightly enhance the experience for the player in a safer way.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. You've also, earlier on in this conversation, you mentioned your training programs and the interaction masterclass. I can remember not too long ago, you recently updated these in line with the new UKGC guidance. So would you encourage operators to do something similar in implementing AI for player protection in line with sort of increased technological requirements?
I would definitely recommend to use AI or at least a tech-based solution. I mean, the UKGC is mandating that now as part of their guidance, that they've got an automatic solution. Now, that doesn't need to be something as technologically advanced as Mindway AI, for example, and it may not be in the gift of every operator to go and do that. But automated systems need to be used because identification is such a big task. And when we look back at sanctions, penalties, fines that have been given to operators in the last few years, mainly they've all come about because a customer was not identified at the right stage, or they were identified and then not interacted with. So that's why I say these are the big two touch points here. If you've got an automated system, it's another line of defense. Largely, it can be a cheaper option as well compared to teams of people scouring through customer records looking for those signs. We're seeing it being mandated more around the world now. I believe New Jersey will be mandating that. We're seeing that happen more around the world, and I think it's the right way to go. But like you said earlier, just avoiding the over reliance on it and keeping that human element is important. But also, if you've identified a batch of customers that you need to interact with, but you don't have the team or you don't have the skill to make that interaction, then there's little point in the identification stage unless you're going to close those customers' accounts. And I'm a big believer that closing a customer's account should not be the first port of call. There's a conversation to be had there where that player can continue to play in a safe space for a long period of time. But I think if you've got automated systems but you don't have the teams, you don't have the skills to have that conversation, that interaction, then you're going to be closing customers' accounts down a lot earlier than if you were properly skilled otherwise.
Okay, great. Some really solid advice for operators there. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us today, Dan, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks very much, Ted.